As you know, or maybe one interesting piece of data is that when the economic crisis hit in the global economy in 2008-9, one of the sectors that didn't see so much of an impact and that continued to have a certain level of consistency in its profits and sales was the healthcare sector. And this is a reality of a system in which healthcare is increasingly provided through the private system. We don't have a comparable data, as far as I know, to show what is the situation today in India with the current slowdown. But we do know that when people have to make a choice between any other priorities and the health of their dear ones, they will put the priority for health, and when that means putting money, then that can have catastrophic consequences. And that is something that we speak a lot, for instance, in the Indian context, but it's a reality in many countries where you have to have money so that you can access the healthcare system. And this is, of course, not a good news, and we are going to hear today more about the transformations that are taking place in the private healthcare system in different regions. With this, I would like to now invite Ravi Jugal, who has also done a lot of work on the question of taxes and budgets, to give his presentation.
So where public health services are concerned, they're generally presented as a more comprehensive thing where there's preventive, promotive and curative aspects kind of built into unlike the private sector, which is largely curative oriented. The secondary and tertiary healthcare, so hospitals, etc., which provide care at higher levels. And then there's tax-based financing, or sometimes governments use insurance also. And public spending today in India, for example, is merely 1,538 per capita, which is about 1.02% of GDP, which is ridiculously small for a country which is supposed to be the fastest growing economy in the world. So I think that's a tragedy that we've been seeing over the decades, and it's not changed much. And we've hovered around 1% of GDP. Then we have the private health sector. You have individual GPs and consultant clinics, a wide array of different. And in India, you also have the complexity of different systems of medicine. So there's Ayurveda, there is Unani, which is the old Greek medicine. Then you have homeopathy and so on and so forth. You have yoga and various other indigenous systems. But we also have a large number, as many qualified practitioners there are in this country. There are equal number of quacks also, people without any qualifications who practice medicine largely in the arena of general practice. I mean, in terms of outpatient care. Sometimes even surgeries are done. Then we have the smaller hospitals, what we call nursing homes and maternity homes, which are 10, 15, 20 bedded hospitals. So these are the traditionally old kind of private sector that we had. And then there are the larger corporate hospitals, which is a more recent, in the last 2 decades, there's been its emergence. And you have a new kind of business, independent business emerging, which is diagnostic centers. Normally you would expect a diagnostic center to be a part of a hospital, but today it is functioning independently. They reach out to consumers directly through social media, through SMSs and so on, giving you offers. So you don't need a doctor's prescription or referral to get diagnostic services. So this is a huge, it's growing at the rate of 40 to 50% per annum. It's a huge business. Out-of-pocket financing and private health insurance are the 2 major modes in India, at least in terms of financing the private sector. And today in India, the out-of-pocket expenditure is around 4,000 to 4,500 rupees per capita. So compared to what I showed as the government spending, so it's 3 times. Then we have health insurance in India, where premiums are paid. Premiums paid today are 37,029 crores. So that's add another zero, and that's millions. So about 370,000 million is the amount of premium that goes out to insurance companies, of which, incidentally, in terms of coverage, that's about 37% of the population is covered through this. But the larger coverage is through government-sponsored schemes, which is out of that 37%, about 80% or 85% of the coverage is actually through government schemes, which is the second point. The government-sponsored, the premiums they pay is much less. It's about 10% of the overall premiums that insurance companies get, but the coverage is huge. So why health insurance will not work? So under Ayushman Bharat, a huge shift to private sector provisioning is happening. So it's basically kind of expanding private markets. So that's what Ayushman Bharat and the earlier schemes, which were state schemes, were doing precisely. So insurance has not worked anywhere in the world. It requires lifelong premium payments that increase with age and declining income. So if you stop working, you retire, who's going to pay your insurance premium? Because it's huge. So as you grow older, the insurance companies demand higher premium. It is in a country like India and many other developing countries, unregulated healthcare systems exist with absence of ethics, and no standard protocols in medical practice are used, and so on. And it does not solve the problem of out-of-pocket spending. Insurance, in fact, it favors the rich and it promotes inequity and elitism.
As emerging from our study, a lot of restructuring of employment for doctors is taking place in India. If we see from 1970s, then we can see that the shift is taking place from doctors working as an individual practitioner or working with government public health system as in a medical colleges or working with healthcare facilities to having small or medium scale hospital in 1980s to 2000 especially, and now we are seeing that 2000 onwards doctors have started working as employee or as consultant in multi-specialty corporate hospitals. So we are seeing that the shift is taking place and doctors are preferring to work with corporate hospital. It has become a favorable destination for them. So why is this shift taking place? What are the factors that are pulling doctors to corporate hospitals? So there are certain factors which came up from this study. Firstly, opportunities and benefits that they see that they get in corporate hospital. Firstly, of course, the good pay, which is definitely better than any other kind of hospitals, government hospitals or small hospitals. So this is one factor which attracts them to corporate hospitals. Secondly, access to infrastructure and advanced technology and equipment. Third is prestige and status. They also find that there is a prestige and status being associated with corporate hospitals. They also think that there is a protection against possible violence, because in recent last 1 year, a lot of violence cases have come up, especially in India. So because corporate hospitals are having those security guards, security personnel, they feel a little protected in those setups. Some doctors also mentioned that they do not have to make own investment, they do not have to worry about any administration things, and they can simply focus on clinical practice. One of the respondents said that corporate hospitals have made our life easier. Last is at the level of government. So many doctors complain that government do not have appropriate policy to absorb doctors appropriately. Also, doctors are disinterested to work with government because of the poor working conditions and poor pay as compared to other setups. So these are the reasons which more or less leads doctor with the option of joining corporate hospital, which is reducing choices for young doctors especially to start their own practice. Coming to the last slide. So overall, these findings suggest that a lot of employment shift is taking place for doctors as well as in employment relationships.
Until the 90s, Nepal was almost a closed country. And Nepal didn't have, or the global market didn't have access to the country. Therefore, private market in the health sector was very nominal. This was negligible, almost was non-existing. Although it doesn't mean that health services provided by the public sector was enough. It's not that. There was a big gap between the need and demand of the people and the supply by the state. In the 90s, there was a people's movement in the country, and this movement overthrew the autocratic monarchy and settled multi-party parliamentary system in the country. And Nepal was open at that moment. And this is how the private market was allowed to the country. And the interesting is, it's not only the health sector, but overall private market was settled in the country. Because the state was very weak. It didn't have that ability to control the market. And it was experiencing just a liberal democratic system in the country. And it didn't have enough structure to control, to regulate the market. And it was very, very favorable time for the market to establish in the country. Therefore, in one hand, there was a huge demand and expectation of the people after a new political system in the country. On the other hand, the state was not able to provide, to supply, to offer the health services to the people. Therefore, there was a huge gap between the need and expectation and the real supply of the services. And it was a golden opportunity for the market to fill that gap. And the extent is that even ambulances are commercialized. Because ambulance is at least is a symbol of charity, but it is so badly commercialized, and these ambulances are not waiting in the hospitals. They are just waiting like a taxi. They are waiting for the patients to catch, and there is a syndicate. Yeah, syndicate. Well, I think there is. I think what I would say is, we are claiming the accountability of the government to regulate the private sectors, but I must admit, at least in Nepal, that the voices are so weak. We have not been able to lobby in strong voices. Even the People's Health Movement, Nepal chapter is not being able to lobby or not to advocate for the accountability of the state to control the private sector, and this is high time that we are trying to do. I think, of course, we have to search for the answer.
And as a public health program, really we focus on, realizing health as a human right, but also as a public good, which was earlier on mentioned, and really looking at who are the private actors outside of the health sector. So meaning donors, because we also know donors are great influencers, institutions, public finance institutions like the World Bank, which we've seen in the African region actually promote public-private partnerships, and then also, what I'll say private sector or just private companies that are engaged in delivery of health. So the first trend that we have seen from the work is that with the discussion on sustainable development goals and the work towards universal health coverage, we are seeing the political leaders on the African continent using UHC as a sort of strategy for formulating their legacy, and as a result, UHC or healthcare for all is being politicized. Now, when that's politicized, they're also looking and have publicly actually made declarations that private sector is the way to look, for funding gaps for UHC or for healthcare for all. So it's no longer a secret or it's no longer backdoor, but it's clearly evident that the political leaders are saying private sector should help us fill in the gaps, for the funding gap for the funding for healthcare. And then the second trend we're seeing is in relation to the approach of public-private partnerships. Last month in Uganda, there was the very first public-private partnerships forum. I'll be referring to that as PPPs. And during that forum, we had a range of African governments signing on to what they call the PPPs network in Africa. And what is very interesting about the PPPs model is that we've had two examples, one in Lesotho and in Kenya, where they have clearly been unsuccessful. But even with lack of evidence of the effectiveness of these public-private partnerships, our governments are still going ahead to endorse these PPPs as the strategy for financing healthcare. So, this is just my projection that in the next few years we might find a reduction even in investment in health, or even in budget allocations to health, because the argument is that social determinants like education, like agriculture, like infrastructure development are still contributing towards health. In conclusion, what can we do about this? And I think one of the issues that has been mentioned just from yesterday and also today is the aspect of regulation of healthcare, of private healthcare specifically.
And for a more bright note, the failure of the private sector is a reality not only in health, it's been a reality in other sectors, and for instance in water. That has led to many situations where citizens or local governments have brought the services that have been privatized back into public health. And there is a book that has collected case studies of more than 800 cases where privatized services were brought into public hands back. And a lot of them are in water, but they are true also in other sectors, electricity, social services, and healthcare. So this is a reality. There is a kind of counter force and a counter movement that is going on, and of course we hope that we can very strongly be part of this.